Welcome, everyone. So, I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for today's explainer. If you're gearing up for grade 7 ancient history right now, well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're going to walk through a complete, highly structured roadmap of your entire upcoming historical journey. And we're not just going to look at what happened in the past, we're actually going to look at exactly how this curriculum is designed to help you understand it. All right, let's dive right in. So, our essential question for the entire course is this: how did ancient societies solve problems of power, belief, and community? I really want you to think of this single question as your ultimate survival kit for the upcoming school year. Honestly, everything we cover, every single civilization we visit, and every tool we learn to use is going to tie directly back to this. Whenever you feel kind of lost in a sea of dates or unpronounceable ancient names, just come back to this question. It's the compass that'll guide our entire exploration. To get to those answers, we need a game plan. Here's our agenda for today, basically mirroring how a teacher might set up a syllabus on your very first day. We'll start with the essential question, move to geography and historian tools, check out early civilizations, the ancient world, new empires and faiths, and finally wrap up with the legacy of the ancients. Section 1, the essential question. Let's unpack our core framework for the year. Okay, so the curriculum pacing is broken down into 4 major units. You can see Unit 1 gets 10 weeks, Unit 2 gets 9, Unit 3 gets 10, and Unit 4 also gets 10 weeks. This timeline gives you a really fantastic sense of scale. I mean, we're looking at nearly 40 weeks of deep, focused learning here. We aren't rushing through this. We're giving each massive era of human history the actual time and respect it deserves, so you can truly digest what's going on. But, how are we actually going to study all of this? Well, we're going to rely on some incredibly sturdy framework foundations. The course uses the NCSS C3 framework, which is a fancy way of saying it supports inquiry, civics, economics, geography, and history. Plus, we lean heavily on Common Core literacy standards for grades 6 through 8. And what does that actually mean for you? It means you won't just be memorizing a bunch of dry facts. No way. You're going to build real, transferable skills in evaluating sources, using evidence-based reading and writing, and really communicating your conclusions effectively. Moving right into Section 2, Geography and Historian Tools. This corresponds to Unit 1. Think about it this way. Before you can build a house, you need tools, right? And before you can study history, you have to know how to think like a historian. The crucial starting point here is understanding what primary and secondary sources are. These are our historical documents and accounts. But, and this is a big but, we don't just accept them at face value. We have to rigorously evaluate them using ideas like credibility and reliability. Why is this absolutely crucial? Because checking credibility is step 1 before diving feet first into the content. We have to know if the voices from the past we're listening to are actually trustworthy, or if, they had their own hidden agendas. Section 3, Early Civilizations. This is where we hit Unit 2. So in this 9-week unit, we use ARO standards to look at a really fascinating dynamic: geographic and human factors versus economic principles. We're going to see exactly how societies influence and are influenced by the physical world around them. Like, how does living right next to a massive river change the way you trade? Or how does a harsh desert shape your technological development? Geography isn't just lines on a map, guys. It was literally destiny for these early peoples, fundamentally shaping their economic principles. And man, there were some incredible breakthroughs that came straight out of these environments. The Mesopotamians developed writing. The Egyptians created papyrus, which effectively gave us the ancient version of paper. And the Israelites created scripture that went on to deeply, deeply influence the religions of Europe. These aren't just random trivia facts to memorize for a test. These are concrete technological and cultural developments. They show exactly how early people solved those big problems of community and belief that we talked about back in our essential question. Next up is Section 4, the ancient world. This is our third pacing block. Here, the focus shifts just a little bit. We start looking at the dynamic relationship between social systems and structures versus the individual. Just think about that for a second. How do massive overarching social structures and forms of government actually shape the identity of a single everyday person? If you grew up in a heavily structured ancient society, how did that dictate who you were even allowed to be? This unit explores the ARO standards of society and identity, uncovering how these giant systems influenced regular individuals on a day-to-day basis. And the innovations from this era? Truly mind-blowing. According to our texts, we see the Greeks further developing systems of writing. Over in the East, the ancient Chinese actually created paper as we'd recognize it today. But perhaps most fascinating of all, The people of early India invented the concept of zero. I really want you to pause and think about that. Inventing a number to represent literally nothing. It's a massive cognitive leap. I mean, it's a stroke of absolute brilliance that completely changed mathematics, engineering, and really the whole world as we know it. On to our final 10-week phase, Section 5, New Empires and Faiths. As these societies grew into massive empires, well, they inevitably bumped into one another. And these expansions really highlight the dual forces of international exchange, connections versus conflict. We're going to be studying the causes and the ripple effects of interaction among these expanding societies. Sometimes that interaction looked like sprawling trade networks, sharing ideas and diplomacy. Other times, it looked like devastating war. We're going to look closely at these interactions to understand exactly how the modern map was drawn through both the sword and the merchant ship. Out of this intense era of connection and conflict came some of the most enduring legacies in all of human history. Let's break down some of these late ancient milestones. The Romans invented concrete and mastered the arch in building, which quite literally anchored their empire in stone. The Christians helped fundamentally shape the religious beliefs of the Western world. And Muslim civilizations not only spread Islam globally, but they also invented algebra. Yeah, so if you're taking a math class right now, you have these ancient scholars to thank for it. It just goes to show how cultural and intellectual developments totally cross borders and centuries. Finally, Section 6, Legacy of the Ancients. Let's talk about what you actually take away from this. The curriculum defines 4 major outcomes for grade 7 students. By the end of this year, you're going to be able to clearly compare different political systems. You'll be able to explain complex religious and cultural ideas. You'll be tracing the pathways of trade and cultural diffusion across the globe. And, arguably most importantly, you'll be fully equipped to evaluate historical legacy. You won't just know what happened, you're going to be able to argue exactly why it matters today. So we end right back where we started, bringing our essential question full circle. I want to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. Which ancient solution to power, belief, or community still shapes your world today? Is it the concrete under your feet when you walk outside? The algebra you have to do for homework? Or maybe the way your own government is structured? The ancient world isn't dead and gone, folks. It's alive all around us. You just have to know how to look for it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on this explainer, and I hope you are incredibly fired up to begin your historical journey.